Can I see that paper for a sec? Huh, that's odd.
What are you talking about?
Oh, have you not heard?
Heard what?
Heard the word. Heard the word. Don't you know about the herd? Surfing!
Anything can happen in football these days.
Rest in peace, indeed. Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. And look, based off the entrance here, I think you know what we're going to be talking about today. But rest in peace, Heard's the word. It was a great video. It was a great segment. I think you all secretly liked it. I know some of you were like, I hate that song. Secretly, you liked it. Let's be real. Special edition. We are back. We said we'd be back when there's TFC news, and oh boy, is there some TFC news to share with you. With Michael Singh and Jeffrey P. Nesker on this episode. Guys, how you doing? We thought we were going to maybe get into the holidays with only talking about Prince Owusu, and then this happened. Black Friday news drop at 4 p.m.
Coincidence?
I don't know. Like, hey, you know, all coaches got to go. DP's on sale. You know, it's maybe that's a sign of things. I don't know.
No, that was definitely a strategic news drop by Toronto FC. But yeah, no, big surprise. I'm curious, boys. Is that the last time we ever hear that outro?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I still owe like a best of where I'm gonna go like properly into every quote and like make like a supercut just for my own entertainment. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. But I guarantee you there's still one left of them. And that's why I'm muting, guys. You're all getting your wish today. I turns out you can't have a cold and then go out drinking all weekend and expect to not feel like absolute garbage come Monday. So that's where I'm at. I'm sure you don't want to watch me clear my nostrils or listen to me clear my nostrils. So I'm going to be mostly on mute this round, but that doesn't mean I don't love you boys. It actually means I love you extra much so that I'm not impugning on your debates with my awful frog voice. So.
Hey, we might get a 5-star review on our Apple podcast now.
Yeah, I know. Somebody's just going to do it just for that. So mute away. Now, listen, obviously, look, you all tuned in. You know what's going down. John Herdman has resigned as Toronto FC manager. On Friday, or at least it was announced officially Friday at 4 p.m. as we were all leaving work. So, you know, look, a lot of stuff to go over in terms of, you know, not just maybe his legacy at TFC, but I think his legacy in Canadian soccer. I think that's something to discuss because there's a possibility that he may never coach in his country again. You know, and that is a possibility. But maybe before we dive really deep in, I just want to maybe get your guys' thoughts on sort of the announcement, the timing, like just in terms of, I don't know if anybody was really surprised, but I wonder if it was more the timing that you might be surprised by. Mike, I'll go with you first.
What do you mean by timing?
Well, just like in terms of, you know, doing this now, you know, the thought there was that maybe they'd waited until they got either some kind of official word or maybe a little later. But maybe just in the sense that they're just kind of cutting cord now and just saying like, you know what, we're just going to go now before, you know, we really dive into the free agency market.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question to ask. I do wonder if there was some sort of communication, and I'm sure there was, between Canada Soccer and Toronto FC. We do know via the Canada Soccer release that went out a few days prior to this announcement from Toronto FC that some of the, I guess, disciplinary actions was going to be handled internally. So I wonder if this was a case of, you know, something was coming down the pipeline and, you know, Toronto FC amicably giving John Herdman a, you know, resignation, but it's a, hey, come on, you know, it's more so yeah, you've got other business to handle and take care of. I think it's more so that, and we're assuming, we don't know, but it's hard to imagine, otherwise. The only thing, like, I haven't really shared too much thoughts about this, entire situation. The one thing I wish we could all understand a little bit better is the dynamics at play for Canada Soccer's governance over, this whole situation and how it impacts Toronto FC. It's not something that I understand, too well. I do know there's obviously relationships that have to be kept. I know there is, uh, potential discipline that could strip Herdman of his coaching licenses and coaching badges, which would obviously have some implication and some impact, I believe, on his ability to manage
Oh, a
Toronto
lot.
FC moving forward. So, maybe it's a case that their hands were tied, or perhaps it's a case of, them and Canada Soccer working together to find a solution, which ultimately is obviously, Herdman out.
I mean, it's a you can't fire me because I quit, 100%. And I think, you know, it is supposition on our part, but all signs point to yes. And use whatever adage you want. When there's smoke, there's fire, etc., etc. You know, it's just so sad. Like it's all it's just such a mess. And uh yeah, my thoughts on it are I said this on the show. I think for me, and I know I think the deciding factor was, Richard Greenberg asked, how long was Herdman originally signed with TFC? He was here till 2026.
Yeah, the end of
His
2026.
resignation nulls and voids that contract. So he's no, like, TFC doesn't owe him a dime, right? And I think that was too much of a temptation at when push came to shove. The fact that there was a lot of question marks with whether, he's got the tactical nous, whether the cult of personality had run dry. We don't know what his relationships were like with Pelly and the rest of the board. People have come out, on all the socials now talking about how they sort of felt that at the end of season presser, the what Herdman was saying wasn't really aligning with what Pelly and Hernandez were saying, and so
You kind of
they
pointed
were
that out,
they
Jeff.
yeah, well, and I don't want to take credits. People did better than me, and then they were also pointing out how much they were topping up Jim Curtin, right? How much Pelly and Hernandez were. So, you know, it feels awfully cloak and dagger, but there's no better way to describe this absolute heinous bullshit, right? I'm gonna swear a lot tonight because I really don't give a shit anymore. Like, this is such an ungodly mess, you know, and I'm just so sick of other shoes dropping that aren't Lorenzo fucking Insigne, right? Like, it's all smoke and mirrors, right? We know the thing that needs to be attacked, and everything else is falling by the wayside. It's driving me crazy. It's driving me absolutely crazy. And listen, we've done our bit on a bully pulpit about drone gate, and whether it's cheating or it's not cheat. The fact is, you get caught and it's bad. Don't get caught. This thing wasn't going away for whatever reason, and that's a whole other show. Whether it's the self-flagellating Canadian media, whether it's, we hold ourselves to a higher standard for some asinine, stupid motherfucking reason. At the end of the day, it is what it is. It wasn't going away. And one of the best comments that I heard was, if the plan is twofold, and I do think TFC really needs to get off this horse of trying to capitalize on 2026, because it ain't happening. not anymore. But if it is, and if there's also this factor that they want to reattach the academy to the first team and get in much more of a pipeline. I forget who wrote it, but somebody said, look, at the end of the day, you're going to Brampton and you're pitching to, next prospect's dad, come to the TFC academy, and the dad goes, but why? Why is Herdman, the cheater, still there? You know what I mean? And you don't want to have to answer those questions. So between the fact that, like, this season started off really strong and then went off a cliff, they don't have to pay him anything. It's not a Mike Babcock situation where he's still on the books for the next 100,000 years, right? Of course it was going to happen. I'd almost feel stupid that we were saying that it wasn't going to happen. Of course it was going to happen, because nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And Big Shiny is always going to take precedent, right? But I'm just so done, guys. Like I really am. I'm so sick of the smoke and mirrors bullshit when we all know what needs to happen that isn't happening, right?
Yeah.
And now they're
Yeah, I
looking
think
for a new coach. Who cares? Who
Yeah, I think
cares?
there's a lot going on with this club, obviously, and we're not, without even going into the whole DP thing. Like this was a whole other, right? Like you've got this thing with the DPs, and you got to figure that out, and you don't have a president technically. Is Keith Pelly going to be the guy? Is Jason Hernandez going to call the shot? Like who is that person, right? You've got like this little drama, and then now you've got this Herdman thing also going on, right? And I think from the club's perspective, it kind of working with a little bit of its hand tied behind its back, because in the end of the day, Canada Soccer has a sort of Damocles over John Herdman, right? They take away his ability to coach in his country. There's no point in keeping John Herdman, right? Like he can't coach parts of the games. He can't coach in the Canadian Championship. What is he going to do? Sit out half the time and then go to coach all the games in the States? Like that makes no sense.
He does have
probably
experience doing that with his notebook.
Well, here's the thing. If Canada saw, yes, that is true. But that was a little bit different situation, right? We knew there was a date where he would actually take the touchline, right? And if he does that, does U.S. Soccer, in solidarity with Canada Soccer, ban him? Does FIFA take action on this too, right? Like there was just a whole bunch of stuff that at the end of the day, TFC just don't need more drama. They already got bookloads of it, right? So this was just a situation where, look, both you and I, Jeff, sat on this show a month ago and said I don't think he should be. We wouldn't be surprised if he was, but we didn't think he should be fired. In the end of the day, I really don't think he was necessarily fired. Mike saying you're correct in the sense that this was more of a hey, this is an opportunity for you to control a little bit of the narrative. This is an opportunity for you to go out without quote unquote disgrace. But at the end of the day, this leaves TFC in kind of a weird space. And oddly enough, I think it might actually be a good thing for TFC that he's gone. In a sense that now, whether it's Marco Neppi, whether it's going to be Keith Pelly running the show, they get to lay out this philosophy that they want, and they get to get the coach that they want. Because in the end of the day, John Herdman wasn't hired by Keith Pelly, right? Like in the end of the day, that was a Bill Manning hire, and Bill Manning is gone. And essentially Keith Pelly now gets to rubber stamp the people that he wants running Toronto FC. And you get a clean slate right away, and you get to build this, this culture that they want to build, whatever that's going to look like down the future. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, this whole concept of clean slate, it's not a clean slate. This is a poison chalice. Anybody
clean slate in terms of
club,
management,
pardon
right?
my French, is a fucking idiot. Like if Bobby Smirniotis comes to this club with Lorenzo Insigne still on the books, he's not as smart as we think he is, right? Like, and this whole idea for a clean slate is also something that I have fought with at Canada Soccer. Like just because Pelly's in now doesn't mean that he gets to erase the blackboard, right? Like there has to be some continuity, and everybody's working from a position where their strength is anti-continuity. And I also want to talk about Herdman because I agree with you. This is now three times in our collective memory when the going got tough, he got going, and we knew this when he came. We said this man's an assassin. He only thinks about himself, right? So we can't be surprised when he only thinks about himself. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me thrice, shame on us, right? And I think that there's a lot to be said for that kind of energy, that kind of, now everybody and their mothers calling him a snake oil salesman and forgetting about the sword and forgetting about all that he did because two things can be true at once. He may be an asshole, but he also did things to this federation and our men's and women's teams that wouldn't have happened without him. I mean, Octavio wasn't going to do it, right? And then I keep coming back to, remember when we had Rachel on the show and she said, coaches get free passes all the time. Because this is starting to feel a lot like, yeah, we want strong personalities. No, not that one, right? Like what did you say about Pep? Occasionally, you have to accept that he's a crazy person, right? Did you see the scars all over his face in the like he was like harming himself on the touchline? He's an insane person, but you deal with that because of his culture of winning, right? You deal with it. Sometimes you look the other way. Now, I'm not trying to find false equivalencies here. I'm just saying that that line is perpetually in flux, and here it seems to be absolutely binary, which is such horseshit. It's unbelievable. You cannot live in a world of ideals, and that's why we're finding such difficulty here, because people are trying to puff their chests and come out like we live in this binary good versus evil world when we fucking don't, and we never did. And holy shit, guys, like it's insanity. Like,
Okay, hold on.
stop this ride. I want to get off. You know what
All
I
right, all right,
mean?
Mike, jump in, because like I want to get your sense of just what did the John Herdman era at Toronto FC mean? Like, what did it really mean? And it's just a year, right? But what did it really mean? This is a manager that came in last year off the back of the worst season in club history. And the whole thought of him was change the vibe, get people to buy in. We talked about it on the show constantly, like he was going to get buy-in. He was going to get buy. That was the big thing, and it seemed like he got that at the beginning. So, what in the end was the John Herdman era here at Toronto? Like, what did it really mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. A wasted season and a wasted year, in my opinion, because while I do believe John Herdman made progress with this team, I mean, how can you deny it? Results, on-field product, all of those things. While maybe it withered out by the end of the season, we saw progress made with Toronto FC. Keith Belly said it, a full rebuild. We were all kind of, I guess, surprised, taken back by that, but now maybe it makes a little bit more sense as to why he threw that term around, because maybe they knew what was, coming down the pipeline here with John Herdman. But you spend a year as a manager getting to know players, getting to know certain pieces, getting to know identities, personalities, playing styles. Players also get to know you and get to know your coaching style and what you're asking of them. And for them to once again hit the reset button and head into 2025 with a new coach and incomplete roster. They even admitted this: no identity, no culture. Still got the DPs on the books. Like, it's hard to see the positives. You could point to, okay, the roster composition is a little bit better now. You could point to the fact that they have more flexibility now. But I would point to the fact now that there's probably not a lot of people that are lining up to play for Toronto FC. There probably was less so before, but even more so now. And it's another dark cloud that just hovers over this team, and another thing that this team has to deal with. You had a sense of hope in 2024 with Herdman coming in. You got a sense of hope with the way that he was able to get something out of the side, and then all of it's just kind of taken away. So I have a hard time viewing this as anything positive.
I'm going to challenge that, because I don't disagree wasted season, but do you think Davy Flores has a history in a John Herdman less TFC? Because I think maybe.
It's tough to say, but okay, sure. Let's give a positive to Davy Flores, and like I said, the roster composition. Maybe you can argue that was better, but maybe there's another player that is better suited for the next coming manager. Because guess what, Jeff? You're gonna have to find a manager who has his own playing style and has his own players that he wants, and maybe Davy Flores isn't a player that suits this manager's profile. So it's just you're hitting that reset button once again, and okay, you want to come in, you want to call this a complete rebuild. I mean, what was TFC doing the last 3, 4, 5 years? Was that not a rebuild every single year?
Yeah, like here, yes, but no, right? Like, because you kind of are doing the thing that the Leafs did for a really long time, which is refuse to really call it a rebuild, and you keep buying these. But like, think about it, right? Like they
did call it a rebuild, though. multiple times.
Yeah, but did they really
For
mean
gritted
it?
teeth,
Like
Bob
they
Bradley.
could say,
Bob Bradley never did until he was pressed like with a gun to his head. But
well, that's
like,
what I
Bob
mean,
Bradley
right?
eventually
Like
did, yeah.
you say it, but did you actually really mean it, right? Because you go out and you sign these DPs, and look, the intention was not to rebuild with Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne. The intent was these guys would make you competitive now.
Yeah.
And
But here's the thing, Mike, is Keith Pelly came out and said 2026. So that timeline, whichever was thrown out to Bob Bradley, is a eerily similar timeline to the one that Keith
but that's
Pelly.
insanity. If you think about it, like now
It's
you're
insanity.
2 years less to get there, right? Basically, the World Cup, it's not right on the doorstep, but it's pretty damn close. And you now have to essentially try to. So what you're telling me is you're going to rebuild the team in a year, and by the start of next season, this team is an MLS Cup contender. I mean, it can happen. It's MLS. It's not impossible.
I mean, he said
But-
it, right? He said MLS, you can rebuild quicker than other
Sure, you
leagues.
can, but you got to
Which
have a
is
coach.
true.
You got to have a philosophy. You got to have a culture. You got to know what it
It's a
is you
full
want to
rebuild.
do. And this team, yeah, I know, but now it's a rebuild. I don't know if this club really committed to like a real rebuild, and I don't know if you really can. To Jeff's point, until you address the DP situation, like, are you really rebuilding if you're keeping both Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo
No.
Insigne?
No. Unless,
So then-
they're the final parts of the puzzle, which is backwards from the way that most teams in the league do this.
Yeah.
Right? Usually your DPs are, at least one or two of the DPs are the core piece of the puzzle. So it's interesting. I mean, look, we haven't talked about it, like Lorenzo Insigne and what he's been up to this offseason, which seems like a PR campaign to get himself back to Napoli.
They do
There
that every
is-
year.
You're not wrong, but this one is different, and I think where there's smoke, there's fire there. But a lot of things would have to happen for that to transpire. And again, it's all the things that we've talked about in the past. How much does Keith Pelly want to put his money where his mouth is, and how motivated is he to move on from Lorenzo Insigne? I want to believe that it's he genuinely is motivated to do so, and I want to believe that there is going to be a resolution here, but it's something that I guess we'll have to wait and see and believe when we see.
Yeah, I believe it when I see it, because at this point, look, I am of the, we've all said it on the show, we're of the opinion that, or at least I am of the opinion that you eat the money and get rid of them. But, I get that that's easier said than done. But I mean, now with on the search for a new head coach, whether that be Jim Curtin or Vanni Sartini, God, it did not be Vanni Sartini, but who knows? Bobby Smirniotis, Tommy Wilden Jr., the names are out there, or you go get somebody from Europe that's out of work at the moment. Like, do you want that coach coming and having to figure out this whole dynamic of the DPs now? Like, is that really what we want as a club?
Because it's worked like gangbusters for the last 8,000 attempts, right? Like, it's so stupid. Like, how these guys are uncoachable, and I'm prepared to put that on my tombstone. Like, Lorenzo Insigne in 2020 to 2026 or whatever the hell his duration is, he's not coachable. There is no coach on the planet that is going to get anything out of him. Stop it. You stop wasting good picks. And the other thing that I think is hilarious is just how pompous we are in TFC land. Oh, sure, Jim Curtin's going to come here for sure because he wants this poison chalice so badly.
We'll talk to
Or
him.
for
They're going to talk to him, and he's
Bobby
going to listen.
Smirniotis is going to light his entire career on fire to have the epitaph to his career be beaten around by Lorenzo Insigne in a cold 7:30 Saturday night at BMO Field. Nobody wants to come here. Like, we'll be lucky if we get Terry Dunn.
I don't know if that's
guys.
true.
Well,
No,
I don't think
I'm
that's
sorry. Then whoever that is an idiot, right? It's like an I can
I
fix
don't
you
think that's true.
situation.
I
Well,
think this
Jeff,
job
what
still
if-
has
for money?
cachet. I think it still has
What if
cachet in the
there's-
league.
What if there's a deal in place for Lorenzo and Say to move on, and you interview on that
Backflips.
process?
Backflips.
So people are going
Announce
to
it
want to come
already.
here then?
I think it changes everything. Then it's
Okay.
actually a rebuild where you have, then it's the job that Bob Bradley, John Herdman, Terry Dunfield all thought they had, especially Bob Bradley, right? Then we're back to 2020, right? We've reset the clocks. Like all of this has just been grinding metal. And that's what's so frustrating about it, is it has been, you know? And
Hmm.
we've tried everything except taking the big financial hit that we should have taken right when the tarot cards revealed that how effed we were. But we refused. And I have a horrible feeling that we're gonna go around this maypole again and saddle whoever's coming next with the same kneecap, with the same concrete
I think we're
shoes,
all in
you
agreement
know?
there. I think we've talked about this a lot,
Yeah.
right? Is if we want to call this a full rebuild, TFC need to find a way to move on from Lorenzo Insigne. That's going to be a valid point that we make throughout the rest of the shows that we do from this point on. Where you can reference it from time to time, but let this be like an unspoken Toronto till I die mantra is
Yeah.
if you want to call this a full rebuild, Lorenzo Insigne has to go.
Okay, so we get that. So let's sort of just reel back to John Herdman a bit in this situation. Okay, so obviously we say off the top, like you could say that the season was, and okay, yeah. I mean, look, we all know, yes, that's true. It still
No, it
doesn't change the
isn't.
fact.
Stop it. Stop
Well,
giving this guy
he
free
has like
passes.
okay, like that is both things. Like you said, both things can be true about John Herdman. Both things can be true about Lorenzo Insigne, right? Like that's just the reality. I don't want to go through this again because we've had this conversation many
Yeah,
a time.
no, you're fair. I get my pulse goes up. I get highs when people defend this fraud anymore. Like, do you have eyes? I don't care what he did in Napoli. I don't care what he did in the Euros. He's dragging our club to the depths of hell, and we're still celebrating him like I don't fuck this guy seriously. And honestly, like anybody that defends him, I'm just gonna drag you now because this is stupid. It's stupid. It's stupid, and I'm over it. But I'm gonna mute myself again.
Yeah. So like in terms of John Herdman, at the end of the day, I mean, was he really like? Was he like? We talk about what his legacy is going to end up being here at TFC. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a lot, other than you kind of had a wasted season, weird kind of nebulous season, where you kind of get better in some ways, and yet defensively not so great. And there's a lot of different things. But I wonder if it changes a little bit of the relationship between Canada Soccer and TFC. Because remember when John Herdman got hired to this job, there was a little bit of like Canada Soccer was not happy with Toronto FC. Like they were. I mean, we don't know what the actual sort of situation was, but we know Canada Soccer uses BMO Field a lot. They have offices there, or and do use BMO Field as an office from a Toronto perspective. So
And
they
a
are
training
linked.
ground.
They are, and they use training ground, so they're quite linked. But I wonder if this changes the relationship a little bit between the two, because the two are linked in a lot of different ways. And I just, somebody put up the in the comments there, would TFC consider Jesse Marsh? Like if TFC went for Jesse Marsh right now, like I'm pretty sure Canada Soccer would try to burn 50 Bay Street to the ground.
Well,
Like I don't think they would do that, but has this changed the relationship a little bit? Like, is it a little bit of a strained relationship between Canada Soccer and TFC?
It's such a fascinating point because it's something I've definitely given thought to. You think back to even 5 years ago, TFC was more important to Canada Soccer than Canada Soccer was to Toronto FC, right?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
easy.
the amount of players that were getting called up to Canada Soccer, the pipeline, all of that, training grounds, all of this, facilities. I don't know if that's still the case. There's two regulars from Toronto FC that are in Canada Soccer's team, like I said, on a regular basis, Richie Laray and Jonathan Osorio. Obviously, you still have the facilities, but there's always pressure for Canada Soccer to move beyond Toronto, and I believe there's a new Canada Soccer training facility being built as well, unless that has been
Just in
halted.
like
Just
northern
north of,
Toronto.
right, but just separated from Toronto
Yes.
FC's
Yes.
overview, right? So that dynamic has shifted a lot, and TFC getting ahead of things and maybe forcing Herdman's resignation also potentially has, you know, a role to play in their relationship management with the CSA and Canada Soccer, who again, I believe are in a uh, much stronger position. I think Danny's saying the youth teams are basically 60% TFC kids. That's not true. That's not true anymore. Like I'll give you 20% maybe, but that's not true anymore. Um, how much again do they value that as well? Sure, there's some value there, but I think my point still stands is that I think Canada Soccer are in a much stronger position in terms of the importance of this relationship between them and Toronto FC than TFC is now. So I wonder again how much that has impacted this ultimate decision for John Herman to move on.
Yeah, and I think about this also in the context of some of the names that are being sort of thrown out there in terms of who could take the TFC job next, right? Obviously, the one that a lot of people, sort of all the soccer hipsters, want is Bobby Smirniotis, the current manager / everything at Forge FC. And sort of this, and I believe this was brought up on One Soccer, so let's take that with a pinch of salt because One Soccer is always going to pimp out for the CPL and obviously for sort of the amateur game. But this idea of repairing or building relationship with Ontario soccer, with Canada soccer, by bringing in a Canadian coach who is well respected in all of these regards in terms of the youth game in Ontario, the semi-pro game in Ontario, and obviously sending players from Sigma to the national team, right? Like I wonder if there is, again, I'm not saying there is, it's going to happen or that is, I'm just wondering, right? Because there's a lot of different motivations that you got to think about in terms of where TFC, this will, again, John Molnar says this all the time. It feels like every year we're saying that this is the most important off season for TFC, but really it is now because you really have to take the time to actually pick the right guy.
Yeah.
Not just for the first team, but how are you building the academy? Where are you getting these players, right? Because believe it or not, and I know there's a lot of thought about the youth teams and that comment about 60% TFC. That's not the case anymore, right? Like, as you said, between academy teams, between CPLs getting younger players now into their systems, whether they have academies or they use League One Ontario feeder teams like Sigma, like Vaughan Azzurri, things like that. Younger players are either choosing to go to CPL to get minutes or they're going to go into those systems to try and get professional minutes and then go somewhere else. Whether you agree with that or not is not really important. The fact is that is happening. So that means the catchment base for TFC youth players is shrinking a little bit. So I wonder if TFC start thinking about that from a footballing perspective when you talk about culture and you talk about building an identity, and you have Marco Neppi, who comes from Bayern, who understands youth development and understands networks of building academies and building structure within teams to feed your first team. I wonder if that becomes a thought in terms of who they bring in as the next head coach.
Marco Neppi's been here for how long? I don't think we know exactly. But Marco Neppi's been here long enough that the fact that Lorenzo Insigne is also still here means that either Marco Neppi's an idiot, which I don't think, or the club isn't listening to him, which is probably the truth.
Or the move just hasn't happened yet.
It just hasn't
or
happened
the move
yet.
just hasn't happened yet, which, oh my God, crossing all my fingers and all my toes, I am going to like absolutely have a party there. Yeah. Nico Tom Developers really doesn't like me. Sorry, Nico Tom Developers.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Mike.
No, it's I'm at a point now where I felt like every time TFC was going to hire a new coach in the last, 4 years since Greg Vanney left, there was some kind of profile that it was easily identifiable in terms of the next coach that I felt like Toronto FC should go after. For a rebuild, I'm not so sure. Like I don't have that answer because let's just say Bernadeschi's still here. Let's just say Insigne's still here. Do you want to bring in a coach for the rebuild? And what I mean by like, there's, this is popular in other sports, but you bring in a coach to go through some losing seasons and go through some growth and development, and then you bring in a coach to put a team over the top and to, take that team to the next level. What kind of coach do they bring in? Can they find a coach that can do both? Right? Is that possible in MLS? I don't know. I don't have that answer. So I don't know what type of coach they should go after.
I would say that if there was a coach out there that has the track record for it, it's the guy who just got fired from the Philadelphia Union, right? In a sense that he was able to, like, okay, didn't win an MLS Cup. I get that. In Philadelphia run a very different way. I'm not saying that he's coming, right? He may end up taking the NYCFC job. There's like 5 or 6 other openings in MLS currently. It's like firing season in MLS coaching circles right now. But
there's like 13 openings.
Okay, there you go. So, right? So, like, he's got his pick, right? He might have got fired inexplicably from the Philadelphia Union, but he's going to be all right, So, like, the question then becomes, okay, if you're Toronto FC, you're going to have to answer a couple of things, probably before you even get the head coach, right? Are we really in a rebuild? Right? Are we really? I know they say it publicly, but again, until I see action on the DPs, it doesn't really make sense, right? You invested in the DPs, you invested in Richie Larea, you invested in Jonathan Osorio, like you invested in 4 players that essentially should help you win now, right? So what do you do there? What is the philosophy there? You've got a youth system that is producing quality, but are they first team quality? Are they going to get enough time? Are they developed enough to really impact your first team squad? Kind of the answer is kind of yeah, kind of no, right? Like you got some guys they're serviceable and then but can they sort of take another step? We don't know yet, right? And then can you be effective in signing players from overseas or outside of the league that are really going to be game changers for you? Right, that are young, that have value, that are going to be able to, potentially be sold on for money down the line, or if they want to stay in the league and want to be a part of whatever, your culture and what you're trying to build at TFC for the long term, like, are they going to be able to help you succeed? There's so many things they need to answer right now. Like, again, I don't know if you can do that in one off season. That is a lot.
Because like
that
even some of the players on the roster, like think about Matty Longstaff.
Yeah.
Matty Longstaff loves John Herdman, and he's come out and he's spoken about why he's been so comfortable in Toronto, and he credits John Herdman for a ton of that. Like, is he someone who is going to stick around? And my assumption is yes, but you never know, because maybe it was that relationship with John Herdman that kept him so comfortable and allowed him to, put a full season under his belt in Major League Soccer. There's still like I mentioned earlier, like you bring in a new coach, the players that are on this roster still fit that coach's identity and still fit that coach's vision. Even players that we thought were successes last year. Like, we think about a guy like Kobe Franklin. Kobe Franklin excelled under Toronto FC's previous regime, obviously multiple coaches. Couldn't really find his way under John Herdman. Couldn't really find his way in that wing back system. Are they going to play wing back system? Are they going to play the 3 at the back?
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know.
What exactly? That's the thing. Like there's so much you need to answer, and then you got to figure out how to fit the players that you currently have, because like you can't move them all now. You've got rid of quite a few. just out of sheer their contracts are done. But even with the players you have now, like what if you start playing 4-3-3 again? What if you all of a sudden need to find a number 10? Like what if you got to find a striker? You got to find another midfielder that's going to be able to make something happen. There's just so
and
much.
You have 2 months to do it because the season
And you got
starts.
2 months to do it. And realistic, like you got 2 months to do it with a coach that, like, again, you're gonna have a front office that is probably got a long list of players that they've scouted now over the last year since they've come in, and they're gonna try to sign, and then they're gonna get a manager, and they're gonna say you got to work with that player, and what if that player isn't the guy? You're just.
So, Mike, to that point, this is the reason why I think they talk so much about identity and philosophies because they foresaw what was happening here, right? You remove John Herman, the club has no identity, right? All of a sudden, they have to go through this exact same process, which we're talking about again, which is finding players who fit the coach's mold. So, what TFC are going to do this offseason are going to establish that, club identity so that the next time, they have to make a managerial move that or whatever GM move, that it's going to be someone who fits that identity as opposed to trying to fit it around the coach or GM. So I get that. It's just it sucks that it's taken so long to get to this point, and it feels like it's impossible to envision this team, contending next season as a result of that. And we got hope because of Herdman and the start that TFC had to last season that, maybe a 1-year turnaround is possible to turn this into a playoff team. Not necessarily a contender, but a playoff team. John Herdman was listen, say what you want about him. John Herdman was a damn good motivator. And you could argue that his voice might get stale over a period of time. You could argue that, maybe he wasn't as sharp in tactics as maybe some other minds, but man, John Herman was a damn good coach. He was. And it's tough for me to imagine TFC finding someone, it's going to be hard to find someone better. It's not that it's not impossible, but it's going to be hard to find someone better that can make an impact and turn our team around in 1 year. That said, could they find someone better that's for the long term for this club? Absolutely. But for 1 year, if anyone expecting 2025, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's trying to play 4D chess when you don't have a chessboard, right? Like it's just the term cart before the horse has never been more apt, right? And like all that we've talked about for the last 5 minutes, all this word salad is the kind of stuff that you do when you're grasping for straws, trying to not drown in the puddle of your own creation, right? But getting back to this idea that Jim Curtin's going to be instantly successful, I think is folly, right? It took him a long time to get his shit together at Philadelphia, the kind of time that TFC currently probably doesn't have. That's all over the chat. And then I think with Bobby and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. and the cadre of CPL coaches, I'm not going to diminish them by saying it's a third division or any of the other stuff that people that have a bone to pick with the CPL. I'm sick of people we can't have any more people learning on the job at TFC. It's as simple as that. It's not the right time for yet another.
We got
person.
Bob Bradley,
and regardless
and that
of
didn't.
pedigree.
Right, but we got Bob Bradley, and he was supposed to be he's the second winningest head coach in the history of the league, and
you're
still
right, Mike, you're right because this magical Trojan horse from Europe that Niepe is going to bring is going to be learning on the job, right? If we got Jose Mourinho, he hasn't coached MLS before. That's learning on the job, right? So once again, I'm speaking in the very binaries I hate because I'm so sick and twisted by this insane garbage fire that is the club that we love right now.
On that note, Jeff, let me ask you a question. Do you think TFC fans have the patience to go through a rebuild? Proper rebuild?
Well, you said it best, Mike. You tweeted or blue skied this, or maybe it was in a private chat, but you said the hardcores will have patience because we're the sickos and we're always going to show up. So maybe that's the fault in our stars. But no, the general casual fan base, absolutely not. 100% not. They want winning. They want now. especially when they keep banding around this 2026 horse shit, which we need to abandon all pretenses that we're cashing in on 2026. And the sooner that the club stops saying that word, I think the happier everybody's going to be.
Well, when
It's
they
just
cash
not
in,
happening.
they're just going to leverage access to the World Cup.
The only cashing
via
in
TFC.
2026 this club is doing is
That's what
cashless
they'll do.
Malula, and that's it. That's the only cash money that's happening for 2026 at TFC.
Yeah.
What do you
So
think?
can I just sort
Yeah.
of go with that comment I made? It was in a chat, but what I mean by that is that I think if you can provide, and what I mean by like the sickos, the hardcores would be in for a rebuild, is if you can provide us as the hardcore fans that watch this team every game and nitpick over every little thing this club does, if you can provide a solid footballing plan on how you are going to take this club from what it is now, which is individual loose threads that are out there, and try to weave a cohesive plan together. But you're going to tell me, Mike, listen, we've got the right people. You can see that from the people that we've hired. And here is what we're going to be doing over the next, we'll say 5 years. I hate saying 5-year plan, but that's the number that always pops in everyone's head. And say, this is what we're going to do. And it does mean that we're going to be bad. We're going to be really bad for a bit in order to get there. I think you can get enough hardcore fans to buy into that if they can see the plan, if they can see a real end in a timeline that makes sense. You know, where you're gradually going to be building something towards an end goal. And I'm not talking about an arbitrary like 2026, the World Cup's the goal. That makes no sense. That's not a goal. That's not an end. That's not it. I'm talking about a point where you have this dream philosophy that can rule the club no matter who's there, right? That takes time. That's not done in an off season. That's not done by hiring one guy. Like, it takes time. And if you can show that plan, I think you can get the hardcores in. I just think from a casual perspective, most casual people just aren't going to give a shit, right? They don't care about this. They don't care about your footballing philosophy. They want to see exciting players score goals and win games, right? And that's what I'm talking about in terms of the difference. And for the most part, casual fans will, if this team is bad for another season, like if they go into 2025 and have another either season like last season, God forbid, a 2023 season, I think, the attendance, I think you could start going back to sort of the years where you saw like 2012, 2013, where you're like, dwindling in the 15, 16,000 mark. Because this casual people just be like, I don't need to do this.
I'll let you read that one, Mike.
Yes.
And I agree.
Yeah,
I
yes.
And I also, the quote is from Ravi. Mike Newell, do you think the fan base are that dumb to fall for that BS for the 10th time in club history? I think that this speaks volumes. Whoa, I hit it. I think that this speaks volumes on why maybe North America doesn't deserve the European soccer culture, because that isn't like that. He just, in a roundabout way, insulted most fans of European soccer whose teams aren't Man City, whose teams aren't, I'm going to toot my own horn because 5-2, but Arsenal, who aren't, like the hometown club, the plucky underdogs, the San Marinos of the world, right? Like, that just we want to win, and of course we want to win, but most footballing culture, 90%, 80 to 90% of it are following the plucky underdogs that never win anything, right? That's kind of the fun of the sport. So
yeah,
we find ourselves at the sort of the crossroads between the North American zeitgeist and the kind of European zeitgeist that we keep trying to measure ourselves against.
Yeah, sorry. We're in the 2012 years right now. No, we're not. No, we're not. I lived those years.
No,
we're not there. We're not
we're
not
again.
that apathetic yet. Like, I don't think
we can't be, because you can't. Once you tasted the summit, it's forever different. You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
we're there. I think we're in a place right now where we're at the precipice of maybe going a
And
really
Aaron's
bad
fair.
way,
The
right?
plucky
Look,
underdogs don't spend the most money in their leagues. That's also a fair point.
Yeah, I have
So,
I have 2 points that I disagree with you guys on. One, and
okay.
actually I agree with Turks here. Why do Toronto FC need to tank? Like, why do they have to be bad?
why do they have to be bad? I don't think
Yeah.
they have to be bad. I think like look, I think there is a point where you need to start building a roster that is going to be competent and sort of fit this philosophy. It does mean that it takes time to build those pieces, right? You're not going to get them all in one off season and you're going to all of a sudden be like I know again, like I said, I know that MLS is MLS, and you can turn things around, and sometimes miracles happen in MLS where you're bottom one year and just everything goes right. And usually what happens in those scenarios, you know, I kind of took a look at the numbers. Is generally you're winning like 1-0 games, and you're just stacking 1-0 games, and you all of a sudden you're top of your conference somehow. That does happen, but generally speaking, it does take some time for you
Takes
to build the right pieces in
So
your lineup.
part of that time is done by undoing, a lot of the mistakes that were left by past regime. So
Yeah.
the one positive that, I keep coming back to is that they don't have a lot of those bad mistakes aside from obviously the DPs, right? They have a lot of flexibility. They don't have too many long-term contracts. The long-term contracts that they have, I think we'd agree are, good, if not serviceable players. So from a roster composition standpoint, maybe they can mitigate some of that time. And the reason why, I say there's no point, or I agree with Turts, and Turts made a great point. It's there's no point in tanking, is because it's not like other leagues where you tank and you get a high draft pick, and that high draft pick becomes the face of your franchise. No, you tank, you get a high draft pick. That number one overall pick is Tyrese Spicer, who ends up being a very solid, role player for your squad, right? It's different. You're not rewarded for tanking in the same ways you are in other leagues in MLS. So, there's no incentive to be bad. So I think every team, even Toronto FC, moving forward, are going to try to be good, but at what cost, right? That's the difference there. Like, make sure that, you're competitive without sacrificing anything in the future, which was the thing that burned them with Bob Bradley's era, where he, was in a way forced to trade some young pieces for pieces that would help now, right? Obviously the Mark Anthony K trade, the Jacob Schaffelberg trade, that kind of stuff. Lucas McNaughton for TFC to get win now pieces because he had a timeline with the Italians arriving to surround them with better players. And obviously that didn't work out. The second thing I disagree with is, I asked you guys, do you think fans will have patience? And you point out that the uh, non diehards, the casuals, right? So for me, it's the opposite. I think the casuals in this market are going to be fine if Toronto FC suck for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they're going to come right back as soon as this team starts winning, right? So they're not going to sit there and maybe not sell at the stadium every game for the next 2-3 years. Maybe you take a small financial hit, but it's not like the team is going to be buried forever and that they won't come back. They'll come back because they only care about kind of the stuff that
No,
we
that's what I
outlined.
mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
They'll be away for those bad years, and then they'll come back once you're back on
exactly,
cup runs. Yeah.
exactly. Which I think is something that the team is willing to absorb to get this thing right, because obviously these band-aid solutions haven't been working. So um, it's the market that Toronto's in. Look, fans are the casual fans specifically. They have a lot of different distractions, right? TFC are very rarely talked about on, mainstream sports platforms, right? That's just the reality of it. You have the Leafs, you have the Raptors, you have the Jays, um, whole a plethora of other teams as well that are, up and coming. And TFC just followed down that pecking order. But when they're good, they get exposure. So, I think that when they do get good again, that, this thing will be fine, and fans are definitely going to survive or TFC are definitely going to survive, I think, a rebuild, and fans are don't really care either way, except for the diehards, which obviously care a ton. That's my opinion.
Fair. And I know a couple of people are just saying like, yes, some teams that did make the playoffs one year, then made the playoffs. Yeah, they did make the playoffs those years because they had to rebuild their teams, right? Like they had to go and get rid of pieces and bring in pieces to help them get to those points. Like people are talking about the LA Galaxy. Like the LA Galaxy haven't won an MLS Cup in a long time, almost a decade, right? Mm-hmm. And they had to take a long time to get it right. And even when Greg Vanney got there, they were struggling, right? Because they didn't have the right pieces. They had to get rid of pieces that weren't fitting. They had to fire their essentially their chief of soccer, their president of soccer, in order to kind of get to where they are now, right? So when I say that, you may have to take some time to do that, it means you got to have the right people in place. You got to be able to find the right pieces. You might be able to hyper accelerate that if you are that kind of market and get that in a little bit faster. But it does mean you're going to have to get rid of players that don't fit, and some of those players that don't fit are arguably your best players, right? And that's kind of what I mean by having to look at a quote unquote tear down, rebuild, whatever terminology you want to use. That's kind of what I mean.
That's a fair point. Did TFC raise season ticket prices this year?
They sure did. They did. I do like your attempt at turning our frowns upside down. Because you're right, tough. Mikey said. You're right. At the end of the day, even though we're so frustrated, I think what makes it even more frustrating is it really is as simple as you outlined. Like, we're not saddled by 1,000 bad contracts. We're saddled by 1, 2, maybe, right? So even though it's cost prohibitive, it's not nearly as complicated as we make it out to be because we're so twisted in our pain right now. So I do take some comfort in that. And I think it's important. It's an important point to raise, and I'm glad you raised it. It's not nearly as bad as it seems, and it can be undone with 2 very, very painful, very, very expensive moves, 1 or 2, but at least it's not 26, right?
Yeah, so. No, all right, but it's pretty damn bad. Like it's pretty bad. You're sacking your coach.
Awful, but like let's I'm still trying to laugh through the tears.
Yeah,
but like
we've talked a lot where we've been very dire this last hour. Let maybe have a laugh a little bit. We've got
you still want
a segment that was what we were originally going to do for this show.
Yeah.
But then TFC went and technically fired their coach.
Yeah, I have really 6. Just my NyQuil's already hitting, so just stop me whenever you want to.
So basically, right? At the beginning, for all the sickos that have been watching this show for a really long time, at the beginning of the season, we all do our over-unders where we make these predictions on what certain players are going to do throughout the year, and then we go back at the end of the season and we look at them and see how horribly wrong we were on a lot of these. So we have put together a clip. We'll do some more throughout the year because we did go through the entire roster and do over-unders, but we're doing sort of part 1 now. Because we knew we had a lot to talk about today with obviously the news of John Herdman, but I know we've got that set up. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll sort of go through our over-unders and see how bad were we in our picks.
So, Jeff mentioned it there. Lorenzo Insigne is going to be the guy that we're starting with. I have his over-under set this year at 10.5 goals. He was on pace last season to score 7 goals. He ended up finishing with 4 goals in 1,500 minutes, 18 starts. In 2022, he was on pace to score 15 goals, 6 goals in 900 minutes, 11 starts. I'm going to ask you guys, will Lorenzo Insigne score at least 11 goals this season?
Under. I've been hurt before. I gotta take the under. I'm sorry. It's only 2 weeks. I've been hurt before. Sorry,
fair.
Guys.
That is fair.
Mike, what do you think?
This is a tough one because it depends on whether or not he's going to.
The chat's split.
Yeah,
the chat's evenly split.
It depends on if he's going to take
penalties.
Penalties.
KFC
well, with Richie now, you're going to win penalties because you got Richie. Yeah, I'm gonna get burned again and say over. I'm gonna say over. The vibes are strong. There is buy-in, and I have no real scientific or calculative way to say this other than Let's go over.
It's all feel, man. It's all
Yeah.
feel.
Vibe City.
Cat's on fire with this. You guys want
Cat's
me to
on
say?
fire.
I'm gonna go under for the opposite reasons why people are saying in the chat. People like the load management, it's working. I'm gonna go under because I don't think he's going to play as many minutes as he needs to potentially eclipse that mark. So let's go under.
Fair enough. Yeah. You're on mute.
I was gonna say not bad. I was very scared of what I was gonna say.
You came out smelling like roses on that one, because like you
Listen,
basically
that was
nailed.
Jeff mentioned on.
Sorry,
That was,
I clicked the mute. Yeah.
That was bang on.
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah,
bang
well
on.
done. Well
I
done.
knew I would be burned. I knew when I said that. I knew like most likely I'm going to be burned here, but
No,
I
like
can't.
the
We can't
point
all
for-
go. We can't all
What
go
was
under
the
for the
final
end.
tally? Did he score 4 this season?
If he scored 4, they're all within the first 4 games.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I think he
there's
scored
at
4 in
least-
all
yeah,
competitions.
Yeah,
I think it's 4
4
in
in
all
all
competitions.
competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a guy.
I mean,
What a
it started
guy.
off. It started off like a dream. It started off like a dream. We thought, oh my
Fever
god, here he
dream.
comes. Hairband was in, the buy-in was there, and then
Yep.
Sharon
Sharon
those
Cologne
calves.
with the gaffer. Yep.
All right,
those calves. They just
let's
went.
go to the next
All
one.
right. Gotcha.
Kobe Franklin. I have his over-under set at 1,750 minutes this season. Last season, for context, he logged 2,172 minutes, so pretty decently over that, about 4 games over that. So far this year, he's just played 65 minutes in 2 appearances.
I think only Bernadeschi played more minutes than he did.
So
was
will
gonna
Kobe
ask.
Franklin log more or less than 1,750 minutes this season?
I think he will. Can I go even? No, I have to.
Are you trying to
I'll
game
play.
the system?
Yeah, I
Like,
have
can I
to
just-
game the system.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think he'll be under, but not like significantly under. And it's just because he just won't start as many games as he did last year, so he'll be under that. But like he'll be like 1,600. Like it won't be a significant number.
It's got to be under. That's an insane amount of minutes.
It's pretty universal here saying under. Aaron throwing in an audible here saying over because Canada actually qualifies for the Copa America. Fingers crossed, big game coming up.
Ooh, Aaron. Love it.
People competing with him at his position is Bernadeschi, Larea, Raul Petretta, Shaquille Marcheretti. You can throw into that mix. I'm gonna go over. I think
Wow.
I think Herdman values Kobe Franklin. He was the first guy off the bench when Lorenzo Insigne was subbed off at halftime. I think he really values him. I think right now he's the first or second guy off the bench for Toronto FC. So I'm gonna go over. I think so.
Fair.
And just as soon, Mikey Singh right back down at the bottom with us,
I'm,
with us bottom
Yeah.
feeders. There we go.
Kobe Franklin.
Kobe, and I think he only played like 700 minutes this year.
703 minutes according
Well,
to
it-
Mark.
I have it slightly different because that's in the league, right? In
Yes,
total,
that is in the
Yeah,
11,
yeah, maybe.
1132. So
Okay.
still,
Okay.
Yeah, fair.
still well
Yeah,
under
that's
that
right.
1750 mark.
Yeah,
Yikes.
that he'll be an interesting
Yikes.
one with his new coach, like where he ends up, because
He's 21.
it depends if they go back to a back 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even
Guys,
even
the new
in back
coach is
five,
player manager Lorenzo Insigne. That's what's happening. So there we go. Anyway, moving on.
It's yeah. It's the Shaquille Marcheretti thing, right? It's that there's too many people in his position, and there's
Yeah.
too much competition there, especially with Richie Larea coming back, right?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
Jonathan Osorio. Ozo had 6 assists last 2 seasons actually. So I'm setting the over/under right now for Jonathan Osorio assists at 5.5. He's playing hard off the pitch this year. So
Over. Yeah, because he's playing higher up the pitch, and he's wearing the armband, and he's not afraid to quote pause in front of Sean Johnson. He means an animal. It is interesting though, because his career year was 2018, right? And he only had 7.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's
I don't
what
know.
I'll say over, but I won't be shocked if it's under because I think he might score a little bit more this season, just because again he's a little further up the pitch, maybe make those late runs in the box, which he's really good at, and score. But just for the sake of it, I'll go over.
yeah, a lot of chat's really optimistic about Jonathan Osorio and about Toronto FC scoring goals in general. I mean, that means, but you guys know that means
Feels like
you're
last
gonna
year.
have to score 6 goals in order
Yep,
for him to hit that over. I don't know if TFC.
yeah,
are gonna
what was
score
it? What was
6
it last
goals
year
this
between Lolo and Berna? We were going to score something like 66 goals. If memory serves. Yeah.
I'm with you guys. I'll go over too.
Mm.
I think he's going to be in
Great.
positions to create a lot more, and I think his head injury issues are, knock on wood, and pray that they're behind him, and we'll see more minutes for Jonathan Osorio this season.
Nope.
That was dumb.
I think he
Two
had like
goals.
6 goal contributions.
2 goals, 3
period.
assists
2 goals, 3 assists.
total in all competitions. Hey, he played 2,400 minutes. If you're playing, I love Ozo. I think Ozo's quality when he's in the right role. But if you're playing higher up the pitch and you are someone that oftentimes the play is going through it that high up the pitch, that's why I think TFC need a proper number 10, because that's not enough. That's not enough goal contributions.
No.
Playmaking. Like, he's the type of guy that when he's not the focal point offensively, like, he excels. And when he's asked to be that role, play in that role, at least through the middle of the park. Obviously, you have Lorenzo and you have Bernardeschi there. That I imagine aren't the easiest to play with when Ozo's trying to play a different type of game. But that's not good enough for someone in that position. So
No. And it's not like he's on the wrong side of 30 at this point, right? Like, he's not falling apart by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, he is what he is at this point.
He's an 8. Right? He's an 8. And he's used more as a 10 this year.
Yeah.
Sigurd Rosted. This one's a really interesting one. The number that I put in there was 12.5 starts. For context, last year, he started 18 games. He dealt with some injuries, some other things going on.
This is a tough one. This is a tough one because I can very much see a world where he does get 13 starts. It'll be scattered throughout the year as you're covering international lab breaks and you're covering just players who need rest on short
Leagues Cup,
rest.
baby.
Yeah. Does he get 13 of them, though? I'm going to go under. Slightly under. I don't know if he'll get 13 starts. He'll get enough appearances. I just don't know if he'll be starts.
Yeah, it's got to be under. It's got to be
Under?
under. We've got better guys in front of him. Hopefully they stay healthy, knock on wood.
Yeah, I'm going to go over. For the reasons Mike kind of laid out initially, I think there's going to be some rotation here that's going to be necessary. Between now and May, I think Herdman pointed out, is TFC just play once a week. But once May rolls around, the schedule becomes a lot more congested. And we saw what happened last season. All it takes is an injury or two, and you're put in a position where a guy like Sigurd Rosted has to come in and fill a need for this team. Yeah, we'll see.
Good job, Mike Singh.
Good job, Mikey Singh.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't win that one.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't.
What's your figure? I have 19 starts all competitions.
Yeah. Same. I have 19.
Sigurd Rosted? I didn't look it up. I just thought it was
I have 19, 25 appearances, 19 starts.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So back in the good books, Mikey Singh. Here we go. Everybody's favorite.
Ayo Akinola. I am setting his over-under goals at 2.5 goals.
No, I'm still laughing at Danny going, I don't even know what the question is, but under.
Last season, he obviously had no goals. He had 2 goals in 2022, 3 in 2021, and then, of course, 9 in 2020. Hasn't been a great start to the year for Ayo. He's, right now behind the depth chart, I think behind Prince Owosu. Can Ayo Akinola hit 3 goals this year in all competitions?
Yeah, I'll say sure. Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, why not?
You don't sound too confident.
What do you mean I don't sound too? I think he can. I think he can hit 3 goals. Like, I know he had none
I
last
don't
year.
think he can. Will he?
I think he can.
The little Io that could. I think it can.
No, I think he will. I think he will. Like, in all competitions, like, he'll probably get starts in, like, the Canadian Championship. Like, I think he'll get opportunities. Hey, like, why not? Like, if he gets, he gets to the Canadian Championship, between him and DeAndre, they'll probably have to start, and he could bundle in 3 goals.
Jeff?
I really want him to. I'm going to say over because I hope that he's going to get more minutes for this beginning stretch. God, it's only 3 goals, man. I know goals are coming at a premium, but I want it for him. I'm going to say over, just for vibes. This is my vibes pick.
Look, we're all rooting for these guys to smash all these overs, but for me, I'm going under with Io. Only reason being, I think these first 2 matches, he saw a lot more opportunity than I think he's actually going to see this season, given the fact that DeAndre Kerr was out, and I think DeAndre Kerr probably slots in as our starting number 9. Can Io play one of those maybe advanced midfield roles, play as a secondary striker, perhaps? But I think minutes are going to be tougher to come by.
But you also have to have some faith that of all the reclamation projects on this roster, aside from maybe the DPs, Herdman's got the most invested in Io. He feels a certain responsibility for rehabilitating Io, getting him back on track, getting him back into form. So, again, we won't know, but the clock is ticking. I agree with you.
Yeah. The good news is for Io is if you've seen our history when it comes to over-unders,
Yeah.
the history's on your side.
All right, I think we need to mention that Mikey Singh does write these questions. Mikey Singh Ferratu over here does write these questions, but I like most definitely good shout. I like that one was my vibes pick because the other ones were not.
It was my vibe pick too, right? Because like you could have, I was kind of like, I think he can.
Yeah.
I think it's just because like look, as you kind of said in that clip, Mike, like I think we were all rooting for him. Like we were really all rooting for the kid. He's now I think in the 2nd division in Sweden, I think.
Switzerland.
Switzerland, yeah.
Hey, he's got 4 goals. So did he go over?
Hey, over.
Is that a
not
technicality?
TFC shirt.
The funniest part, honestly, of that clip was Jeff at the end saying, Herdman's invested in him, and he's the reclamation project. Iowa Canola was.
We should have known then.
His contract was terminated after 89 minutes in Netherlands. Not even a full game. So much for that reclamation project.
Man. Oh man, is
That
that
was
it?
a big
Is that it
guy.
for
We have
the-
a show. People listen to us. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Last
So
one
I
of
think that's
day.
the end
Here
of
we
part
go.
1, or do we got one more?
No, I got one more. If you want.
Okay,
one
cool.
more. I got
That's
Richie. If you want.
Let's start with Richie Larea. So I have his over-under for this entire season at 1.5 PKs won.
Over.
So will Richie
Over.
Larea win
Over, my
at
God.
least 2 PKs? I mean, context is key. Context is important here. Richie won last season 3 with Vancouver, 1 with Toronto FC. He won just 1 in 2022, 1 in 2021, and 1 in 2020. So he had that close shout in the first game. It's not necessarily something he goes over every year, but maybe if he's playing more of an attacking position, he'll hit that over. So, Mike, you say over. He'll win at least 2 penalties this year for KFC.
Yeah, he almost won one like 2 minutes into his return. He's gonna win at least 2 penalties this year. And like, look, will they be legit? One will probably be legit. One will be good border, but he gets in the box and guys get afraid to touch him. Like you can now see it. He's got a reputation. And that may be the one thing that hinders this is that referees now know, at least in the league, know that he has the reputation to go over in the box and be able to
go down
create
and load
things.
these.
No, they're all freelancers. They have no idea.
You're over, Jeff, as well?
I'm smashing that over. I mean,
Yeah.
I've destroyed the button.
Yeah, he does, like you said, he has that little bit of a reputation. It was much worse when he first joined TFC, I think in 2019 season. He was going over every time he was in the box. And now he stays on his feet a little bit more. He led the league in MLS in fouls drawn last season before at least his loan was up from TFC. And that is super rare for a fullback to be in that position where you draw so many fouls. It's just kind of the way that Richie protects the ball, how unafraid he is to kind of get into it. Will that translate into the box? Will he play a higher role with TFC? That remains to be seen. I'm gonna go under. I don't see TFC drawing penalties. If there's gonna be someone, it's gonna be Richie. It just numbers wise, historically, it's not on TFC's side. He's only done 1 in 2022, 1 in 2021. And 1 in 2020. So
He's getting better at it though, like in the sense that not like diving, but like more in a sense that when he gets in the box, I think he has a better idea, like you said, of protecting the ball and being able to shift it really quickly last minute, right?
Definitely.
Be able to suck a defender in to try to challenge for the ball, and he's able to pull it back really quickly and draw those fouls. So I think he'll at least get 2.
I should have done it 2.5. Stumped you guys a little bit better.
It should have been 2. That first one on the opening day should have been penalty. So you should have had 2.
Yeah.
Should have
Yeah.
had 2. I'm gonna go out on
Mikey, so you're picking the Lotto Max numbers tonight, basically, and we're playing
Hey guys,
encore.
a lot of match numbers
Holy
left.
ass.
This is skill. All
This
right,
is skill.
there's
Yeah,
a
that. There's a skill to
we're
writing
not
all
worthy.
of these. Yeah.
We're not worthy.
Hey,
I
like,
told
was
you,
one.
if he was
It was
healthy,
one.
all you got 2.
That's it. That was
Yeah.
the biggest thing, right? Like he only played
Yeah.
1,300 minutes with TFC. But TFC was not a team that won penalties. Like they didn't get in the box nearly
That's
enough
true.
this year, right? They weren't
That's true.
driving at defenders, trying to beat people 1v1. If anyone was doing it, it was Bernadeschi, who doesn't don't go down too often actually, and more times than not settled for options outside the box, or if he was in the box, it was probably a cross or a quick shot. So yeah, I just think the way the team's built, they don't have many of those players and they don't draw a ton of penalties, and I think that was proven to be true.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Impressive.
Part
Mikey, saying
one of our
impressive.
over-unders for the 2024 season. We'll be back. I'll probably do it next week where we come back and we'll show you part 2 and see how incredibly wrong, probably more likely me and Jeff were on most.
Yeah. I mean, Mike.
Get outta
Maybe
here.
next time I'll do the questions.
I
Just
feel like
to
you're
see if I
setting.
can-
I feel like you're setting me up, and you put all my good ones in this first batch, just so we can come back and
I mean,
roast
I
me in the
did
second
put-
batch.
Did you hit on all of them though? You got
No,
the Kobe
you didn't
one,
get
you
the.
got
We
the
didn't get.
Oscar
I don't
one,
think
yeah.
any of it. Yeah, they get the.
Yeah. I think
The
we
one for
all
Kobe
got screwed
Franklin.
on Lorenzo. Yeah.
Yeah, Lorenzo. Well, no, you picked under on Lorenzo.
Yeah, I
Did I
know.
not?
Mikey Singh is 5 for 6. We're screaming tire fire. He would be making.
That's all right.
TFC won 3 penalties last year, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Penalties total.
Whoa. Did that include Leagues Cup or just in league play?
Maybe just league play.
Yeah, because they got 2. Didn't they not get 2 in that?
Oh, yeah, they
game
might
in
have.
Leagues Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, they might have.
Yeah. Well, still didn't matter. It still wasn't enough. As we have documented over the last hour and 15 minutes. Okay.
At least we're leaving on a high note. This was actually
That was a
a good
fun way
idea,
to end
'cause
that.
Yeah, that's a
Because
fun
if
way to
we
end
had
because
ended with me just throwing f bombs and dropping elbows everywhere, I think it would have been.
You gotta put that explicit
Different
sign next to our
vibe.
podcast.
Yeah.
I know.
Exactly.
Seriously, I only get one of these, and I'm very glad that you.
Well,
permitted me one.
for the MLS sickos out there, MLS Cup obviously is this coming weekend. I would have had pegged the LA Galaxy to win, but with Rocky Puig blowing an ACL but playing the last 30 minutes on it
sucks.
and providing the assist, which is baller. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. I could actually see Red Bulls actually squeaking this one out and pulling out an improbable
That's so
MLS
Metro.
Cup win.
7th. Man,
Yeah,
they beat
from
some good
7th,
teams,
and
right?
yeah, and then they only win like their like 3 of their last, I think, like 17 games at the end of the year. It was like they had a terrible run going into the
Peaked
playoffs,
at the right
but
time.
yeah,
Julian
exactly,
Guzman, shout out, sporting director
Exactly.
there at the Rebels.
Yeah.
exactly,
Friend of the show.
exactly. But all right, let's wrap it up. Then
Also
we'll be
Greg
back
Vanny,
next week.
shout out.
Yeah, and shout out Greg Vanny,
Shout
Greg
out to
Father,
Greg
back in
Father.
MLS Cup.
Any predictions?
I really
I
want-
actually
I
think the
would have
Red Bulls
been
win.
Galaxy.
I'll go Red
I
Bull.
would have been Galaxy before Ricky Pugh got atomized. So now I actually think it's Fosberg and the Metros, the New York Metro. Metro.
I'll go Red
Croatia.
Bull for the upset because it would just be kind of cool to see a team that has not won MLS Cup before.
Why
win
are you
MLS
asking
Cup.
us questions? We suck at this. We're terrible. I picked Seattle. Seattle's gonna win.
Yeah.
Inter Miami. Inter Miami's coming back. They're gonna win MLS Cup.
I think the Greg Father has got something up his sleeve. I think the cards will be stacked against him, but at home, I think he'll pull
It is.
something
It's a
out.
home game for them. Yeah, it's in Carson.
Yeah, it
So,
is
yeah,
out there.
I
It
think.
is
I
in LA.
think. If I'm being serious, it's probably LA Galaxy that are taking this, and I just cursed.
Fair
them
enough,
to
fair enough.
sadness and not
All right,
winning
boys,
MLS
let's
Cup.
wrap this up because I realized I
Sure.
did not plug in my computer. My laptop's going to die.
Nice.
Oh, I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
die.
everybody,
My
for
NyQuil's
listening
kicking
in to Toronto Till I Die. Again, for all you listening in, commenting, again, we appreciate you coming in on the ride with us. I know we're not on regularly in the off season, but we are going to try to do some more regular stuff heading into the holidays and all the silly MLS drafts that are going to be happening this month. Check us on all the socials. You can find us there, except Blue Sky. We're not there yet, but
No, we are. I
At
just
some point.
messed up the account because.
Oh, okay. So then I guess we are on Blue Sky, but not really. I don't know. We'll figure it
Not
out.
really.
We'll tell
have
you
to
if we
fix
are.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. For Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
And wait! Can I see that paper for a sec? Huh, that's odd.
What are you talking about?
Oh, have you not heard?
Heard what?
Heard the word. Heard the word. Don't you know about the herd? Surfing!
Anything can happen in football these days.